Welcome, everyone, to an episode of Enlightened Masculinity. I'm joined with Akash Inti Katakam, my co-host and fellow yoga aficionado from New Jersey, United States. And I'm, of course, joining you from Florida right now, but I travel the country, I travel the world. So next recording, you might see me somewhere else. And we have some phenomenal content that we're going to cover today. But I want to hand it over to Akash, because I want to check in with my spiritual brother. How are you doing today on this Sunday, January 20th?
Doing well, brother. Thank you very much for the kind introduction, as always. It's actually been snowing, or it was snowing here earlier today. So last night, it was all slush and such. I went out and traversed Montclair, and beautiful. Not many people out, but the quality of conversations were absolutely amazing.
Wow.
Realizing more than anything right now how much to continue to just put myself out of my comfort zone.
Nice.
There was an experience I had last night where a couple guys were trying to talk to some of the girls that I was talking to originally, and there was like a little bit of like masculine tension. And so it was like putting myself in that scenario, and I realized at that particular moment, words that our brother Vince Kelvin had once said to me: enrichment. So to look to any type of hardship or any type of experience that you struggle with as an enrichment. And I said that, like I shouted that in the bar itself. People were looking at me like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? But it was in that particular moment, I was like, I let it go. I surrendered to the whole process. And the rest of the night actually I ended up picking up the two numbers, and they hung out with my group for the rest of the night. So
There it is.
It's incredible.
I love the contrast when there's another guy, because I train my voice, I train my language, I train myself in ways that I know that they're not. And I want them to be next to me so that everyone can see the difference. And also, I like to pick up things that they do that are good, things that the girl is responding to that they like of them, because I'm so adaptable. My body is so flexible, my mind is so adaptable that I already know that this ego is impermanent. Like I already know that I'm playing a deck of cards that somebody gave me. But what they don't know is I'm a magician and I can change my deck in my hand at will, because I already know I'm playing a game and it's a mind game. And why not just change the jack of spades to the two of diamonds if it gives me some kind of straight flush or something. So I'm looking for the cards that give me the straight flush. And anytime I can see the girl of my fancy interacting with another guy, I can pick up what she likes and I can demonstrate contrast with the other guy. And I love this word enrichment because it's rich. It's rich inside, right? And I love that, enrichment, enriching. And yeah, so super cool. I love it. I went out too, and it was raining, stormy here, and it's really fun. It's really fun interacting as a social yogi, really just practicing my yoga out in field. All this flexibility I'm talking about, relaxing the tension, being aware of tension. It's not just denying that there's tension. There's a degree of going with the flow. Like if there's a energy that would push me away, am I resisting it? Am I trying to resist it? Like, am I trying to push into it as a practice to get myself strong? I don't really want to get myself strong in that energy, like pushing away. If there's a pushing to the woman, if the woman and if we're pushing on each other, I don't resist that. I used to resist that early in my relationships. And now I distinguish, is the resistance, all the resistance is in my mind. It's all inside. But is the resistance something she's actually doing? Or is it something that I'm making totally a story about what she's doing? And so the discernment is essential. Discernment of, am I convincing myself she's her intention, or is she doing something that I just don't like? And then what am I telling myself about what she's doing? And 9 times out of 10, brother, it's an internal, like I'm creating my resistance. It's self-created. And then, but the discernment of that 1 time out of 10, because I tell you what, it's really traumatizing as a guy going out in the world where everybody's just so fucked up. Not like chemically fucked, some of that, but like just they think they have the right to tell me what my opinion should be, or how I should behave, or how I should dress. And there's like even subtly in their passive aggressive, like facial gestures or body gestures, like there's a lot of disgusting communication that's happening. And what they're unaware that that's what it's doing. That's what the communication is. But on a neurological level, it's just because they're so accustomed to the negative communication as love, as the negative communication as this is how we relate with each other. This is how I feel social. This is how I get along. This is how I feel a sense of community, is this kind of communication. And I'm like, I know better, but I also know better than to correct them. And I know better that if I just turn and run and avoid them, like a lot of yogis do, that even one of my teachers, Doug Swenson, that it doesn't change what's causing the whole situation, because I can't change them. But if I don't change me, then the situation persists. The dynamic never changed. The dynamic won't change unless they change or I change. And I'm not going to change what's relevant to them away from them over there. So it's changing something when I'm with them inside of me, so that this pressure that gets felt isn't so much there. And the yogi the male yogi, the female yogi too, but I think females are more socialized naturally. They go out, people will attract to them. They attract. And if they don't, then they take on a certain persona that I've seen time and time again that, we could talk about that, but that's not my interest really. And so as a man, as a spiritual man, I got to get out there and I got to adapt to what's given to me. What cards, what are their cards? How do they play their hand?
Would you call that a spiritual practice itself? And
brother, awareness of the pressure, awareness of the push and pull of energy, awareness of the genetic code, and how I am unconsciously responding to the stimuli of the environment, the stimuli that the woman gives me. If she playfully touches her hair, like flaps it back like that, or gets close to me, or turns her back to me and then gets close to me. Like, I want to know what that means, because ignoring nature is ignoring a part of spirit. Like, what is like when we talk all these words like spiritual and spirit, like we're taking as assumption that everyone means the same thing when we're saying spirit or spiritual. So when I'm saying spiritual practice, like I don't know what isn't my spiritual practice. Like nothing is not my spiritual practice. I smoke weed and it's my spiritual practice because this comes from the base of the Holy Ganges River in the Hindu Valley Kush of northern India. And that's where almost all of marijuana comes from. And that's the origin of Shiva and the origin of Shivites and this sect of yoga and of, the yoga of like destroying the false ego, destroying what you think is you, is Shiva. And so that's my spiritual practice and everything I enjoy doing on that. And of course, going out and talking, expressing myself through the Shuddha chakra, and how do I connect all of the energy centers of my body to harmoniously communicate and commune, right? So it's just two combining into one, communicate with everyone. Then, of course, when you go through this and you have a discernment, you'll start to prioritize people, that there are certain people I want to communicate with more. That the more I communicate with people that it's not serving them, they're not in a place to hear me, or it's not serving me, I'm not in a place to hear them because I grow into people, I grow out of people, then I would be doing a disservice to all the future people that I could help, or that could help me, that we should exchange. And to get there is I earn it. I don't meet the CEO, or I don't meet the person in charge of, animal and wildlife conservation. I don't meet high level people by just sitting and thinking about it. Like I get out there and climb the ladder. And then I go back to my spiritual practice so that I can resolve those sources of tension from within me and become a more open and clear vessel that's more easily, I can more easily see blockages. I can more easily see destructive or counterproductive thinking patterns. When I'm out in the field, when I've made my body very open. If I've opened my body, I've opened my breath channels, because if I open my breath channels, my mind can go there. Like to become aware of your breath channels opening up, which is as simple as take a big inhale, hold, start to feel where it opens. Do it again, do it again, do it again. And of course, there's more refined techniques for that, but you start to feel where places open. That's literally your neurology goes there and creates sensations that you pick up. And so you get mind and brain awareness of parts of your body that were already there, but we're just unaware of. Mm. And so it opens. And so where is it closing when I'm out and socializing? Where is it unconsciously closing? Like, I don't want my body unconsciously closing up because she said something or he said something or how they said it or the noise in the environment or the temperature or it's just a hatha yoga practice. It's Guys, if there was a guy that messaged me from India, I said something to him, long story short, that a person with bad communication has bad yoga. Like, you cannot be a good yogi and have bad communication. Like, it's bad yoga. Like, what are you uniting with over here? Because you're creating distance with people. Then at the same time, there's going to be, to have a friend, to have an ally, to have a spiritual brother means I also have a spiritual enemy. You can't have one without the other. It's meaningless. Like, brother is opposite of enemy. And so who are my spiritual enemies? Well, I don't know. I basically delete them out of my memory as soon as they happen. And anybody that basically comes into my forward movement, into my expansion, and contracts me, try in maliciously and maliciously. So that means with anger, but also with the intention. So the angry intention, that's volition and malicious.
It's interesting because I think Arash had mentioned that for him, his enemies are ignorance. So it could be a person that, it could be even family at times, where they don't necessarily, it's ignorant communication, right? So it's not, they're not intentional, like, I mean, they're family and they obviously care about and such, but they're not aware of how their communication can be damaging or hindering upon you. And so in that sense, like, the enemy isn't really, is the ignorance within anyone, you know, or this is the way I've understood it to date. I obviously don't want to put words into his mouth, but this was my understanding of what he had mentioned. So, along
and I
those
love
lines.
how you say it, because the ignorance in somebody. Listen, I don't consider, there's a few people that are hardwired wrong, that the machinery, the robot is messed up, but that's such a minority. So most people, their aggressive ideas and their aggressive communication isn't really them, but that's in the same way that I'm not really me. Like I said before the podcast, like my cards, I was just dealt impressions, and I respond and react in the world and interact with the world the way that I was interacted with, and just updated to, 2019 or whatever, behavior patterns, 2019 memes, 2019 technology. Like, but it's just the same feeling of communication, which is, a communication is just the codifying of a feeling. It's the codifying of your emotions. Like, there's in sound code I talk about, which you just bought, the flavor of language. At some point in there, I mention, which I call it sound code because two of the lectures are what I call sound code, and then one of them is flavor of language. So there's a theory that human language evolved from the human's need to complain. And so the complaint was a feeling, right? Because the experience is on the inside. And so the language is a verbal codifying of my feeling body. To be a bad communicator is to badly represent my feeling body. And to go to the extreme of, like, the guy that lives in the mountain and doesn't interact with people. Like, at some point, he either dies with his teachings, and it's a very selfish, like, I don't care about that guy. I don't care about the yogi that does that. At some point, he needs to teach somebody. And there comes communication. And if he's not able to codify his experience, he's going to have a lot of frustration. And the student isn't going to benefit very much. So communication is an essential ingredient to the spiritual man. And the main impetus, the driver, because as a spirit, as this entity in yoga, you might call it the Atma or the self, the individual aperture that the universe sees the material through, then the main drive, you wouldn't even want to communicate. You wouldn't care. You would be absorbed in this, because when you can see all and hear all and think all, it's like a kid playing video games. Like, you just get wrapped up in it. Like, everything's available to you. You get on the internet, a kid on the first time on the internet, it's just like searches everything. And soon you'll find preferences, and then you want to have skills in those preferences. So the preference of the animal human, which is the vessel for the mind, you already know where I'm going with this, is women. It's women. It's the female. Anything else is going to spin off into something that ultimately you're not going to find admirable. Like the person that only desires money, the person that desires fame, the person that desires a big following, the person that desires to help animals. Like, on the extreme, the person who regards animals above people is going to violate people for the sake of animals. That's the wrong way to go, because for animal salvation requires people salvation. Because if people kill themselves, it's probably going to really damage the animal kingdom. You know what I'm saying? Like a
Mm.
nuclear war or bacteria or whatever happens that we kill ourselves, that some people like to conspiracy theory about. Animals are going to get damaged in that too. The best thing that people can do for animals is help other people stop hurting animals. And to do that is not going to require guilting or shaming or blaming or any of that. It's going to require communication. So whatever aim you have, communication should be at the top. And why? Because, listen, as a man, let's be real here. Women. Doesn't mean you got to have sex with lots of women. Doesn't mean anything. I don't define what that is, but the female, as a straight man, of course, I'm talking to the majority here, but that's what I do because I'm not here to market myself to a specific. There are people. If you're gay, I recommend Darren Main. Darren Main is a great yoga teacher. I've learned a lot from him, but there's a big segment of his ideas that I don't because they are born from a homosexual just mindset. It's different. I've not met a gay man that's just like in IMC. For example, I haven't met a gay guy in the IMC method. I'm sure somewhere there's somebody, but I haven't met him. So I'm going to go off theory here, or am I going to go off experience? So from my experience, the huge driver of communication is going to be women. And knowing how the social matrix works as we do, which I'm going to stop talking and hand it over because this isn't a lecture. It's imperative as a man that you communicate well with women. And as a yogi, a hatha yogi, this is an essential ingredient of this is awareness of openness inside or closedness inside. Am I open or am I closed? And I think it really begins there.
Yeah. On that note, I mean, one of the things I learned as going through yoga teacher training was in the beginning of I studied Ashtanga Vinyasa, as you may or may not know. So not Ashtanga in the classical sense of an Ashtangi yogi, but I did go through the primary series and I have a good understanding. I can teach it.
Nice.
On the same token, though, in the Vinyasa Ashtanga series that I was trained under with Lifetime, we learned that you go through it's called you open space for others. So in the beginning of class, so it's like 2 to 5 minutes where you just hold space. That's what it was. Where it's you don't say anything. You kind of allow everyone to kind of sit down, kind of understand where their mental patterns are at. Just be with themselves, connect to themselves, and by keeping such a still like space and room, you allow that. And I think this is the same type of thing for as you're having this conversation, or as you're saying these ideas, that it's the same thing for communication. It's like to be so open and like non-judgmental that anyone who comes to you, they can present you with any idea, and it doesn't affect your neurology. You know, like you don't change your or at least from the external worlds doesn't change what you're presenting to others. Which I don't know. I find that to be that's up as you were going on this piece of conversation. A question I had to you though is like, I know you've studied a lot of yogis, and would you view these yogis as enlightened men? If you do, why? If not, why not? I think you've started getting towards, and we started talking towards some of it, but I guess a more direct question in that sense.
Yeah, I don't know what enlightenment is. You know, I've read about it, and all I know is my experience. I've experienced crying in front of certain teachers. I've experienced a tremendous sense of expansion in front of certain teachers. I've experienced seeing certain things like glows or auras or whatnot. But you know, I've also experienced like reading a book and having like experiences like that, or having a dream about a person I read about. So it's all just a story. It's a movie I'm playing for myself. And so the result tells the story. The outcome tells the story. Like, hey, what's up, Lily? Come to the lecture. The lecture's or I think it's Anna, isn't it? You just call yourself Lily Machine. Click the link in the bio and come over to the Zoom. And my experience, what a person can do for me, like how I benefit, or what I see in the material reality. For example, I think of one teacher that I saw glowing as he was guiding me through meditation. Like I was in a really good place. I got to a place where like tears released. I had like an emotional kind of flow. And when I opened my eyes, the guy was fucking glowing like Jesus sitting,
Hmm.
you know, and what a trip, you know. But that same guy has really fucked up communication with people,
Hmm.
and so in a certain uh, area or in a certain
Interesting. When you say that, yeah, when you say that, I mean, one of the things that I've learned is that, and this was through Rosh, is that the whole external world that we see is actually, we can map that on the inside. So everything that we see on the outside is really an experience on the inside. It all happens in the brain, you know, or in the, if we're to think of it from a biological perspective, like anything that you see and understand just comes from your mind and your brain, and neurological connections, like little sparks of electricity going through the brain, and it creates these images, right? This is how we understand the world. So maybe in that, and I don't know, but in that particular moment, maybe it was like that. It would spark a connection that you hadn't seen in a while, or some such. I don't know why, but
That's such a trip. You know, one of these stories that I love interacting with people and women around the country because I get different perspectives. And this one woman told me such a freaking trippy story. This would be such a beautiful like short film. I won't be able to do it justice, but it goes something like she had two sons. One was like 5 and one was like 1 or 2, something like that. Like just barely beginning language. I'll tell you right after this story, Stan. And so she was tired, taking rest because she had 2 kids, and I don't know where the dad was. So she was tired of taking care of these 2 kids. And the 5-year-old goes into the 1-year-old. He might have been 4 years old. Goes into the baby's or toddler's room, the crib, and the mother overhears the kid ask his younger brother something like this: "Hey, can you tell me what God looks like? I've almost forgotten." I was like,
wow,
whoa, that's amazing. Somehow we were
wow.
talking about like spirituality. And so she tells me this story. And I was like, that's such a trip. Like, that's so cool. And so what were we talking about? The mental image on the inside? Like, or
Yeah. The inside, the external
so,
world mapping on the inside.
yeah, you know, maybe I don't remember. Maybe that's what all people looked like when I was like 6 months old. I forget. And maybe that's what people actually look like. It's dull to us or something like that. Like we're colorblind almost. So we're like spiritual glow
That's,
colorblind. We're
yeah.
spiritual.
I mean, kids and children, yeah, they just don't. I mean, the neural connections are really forming then, right? So it's like there's not like established pathways. Like if you think of roads,
Exactly.
it's like you go into a forest that's totally unpolluted, or a brand new forest. Like you kind of walk any trail. You know, I go hiking just about every weekend, and so there's established paths now. Like, I mean, there's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
you go on the blue trail or you go on the green trail. There never used to be these types of trails before. It just used to be the forest. You walk around wherever you walk around, and you hit some things and you're like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. But versus now you have the trails, it's like you see established pathways. So I think it's very similar in the sense of the brain. It's like when you're a kid, I mean, you don't know nothing really knows what's going on. It just kind of zaps around things and sees all these like visual images that are kind of like, whoa, what is that? And I think as adults, maybe it could be that as adults where we have these more established pathways, and every now and then we see a little spark of, oh, this wasn't supposed to go there, and it connects these ideas in a way that presents us, um, I guess, seemingly paranormal experiences. So.
Yeah, there's a you know the I go a lot into the senses and rewriting your samskaras and rewriting your neurology in silent flute. And I have Stan asking me a question: when's your next product coming out, brother? And so Flavor of Language is out. Obviously, I have a long list of products that are out now. Flavor of Language is a re-release because I added 2 lectures to it. And then I'm working on pelvis and sacroiliac joint therapy. So people that got misaligned pelvis, a lot of people message me about that. So in the silent flute, I have a folder of 9 videos, progressions for pulling apart your SI joint, self-adjusting it. And so I have one of my apprentices is writing it up. So like all of the bullet points. And then I'll be releasing that probably for like $57 or $67. But that's going to be phenomenal for anybody with pelvis pain for sure. So for that to come out, but Flavor of Language is out now, and it's really good. And yeah. And if you're interested in that, Stan, then send me a message. So yeah, definitely the neural path. Everything's fresh and new, and you see it with new eyes. Like everything you're seeing, 99.99% of it is just you're expecting to see it. So you see it because you expect to see it. And yoga is a great way for cleaning your palate. Like you have a palate of taste because you're familiar with the taste, and so you expect the taste, and it doesn't taste as good the second bite of the cake. But if you change and eat something else and then eat that, then it tastes good again. And so when you clean out your nervous system, which is the impressions on your nervous system, which is your experience of temperature, taste, texture, hearing, sound, rhythm, internal proprioception, your sexual impressions, all the senses. There's 10 senses in yoga. Then you re-experience living from a very fresh, like dried erase board, like you've cleaned it out. And how much you clean it, because even after you clean it, there's sometimes marker left. There's sometimes chalk left. You can clean very deeply, and it's seemingly endless. I haven't really found the end of it. So as far as like enlightened yoga teachers, I can only really judge based on what's happening on the outside of them and what experiences I'm having. And I could judge based on what people tell me, but I don't care so much about that because of today's society. So Arash is the most enlightened person that I've met because of the experiences I've had and what I've seen on the outside and the congruence of what he says he wants and then what ends up happening on the outside. Then outside of that, I really, really admire David Garrigues, who's my Ashtanga teacher, and I study Yoga Sutras with him. But I mean, he's got really weird communication with women. Really, it's in a very beta way. It's very like you could say wholesome and non-aggressive, and it's very safe. But at the same time, it's just I judge his enlightenment based on he was able to impart in me and create a change in me in such a powerful way. But my trajectory was more from my teacher, Arash. So it was the combination. David's teaching was a small ingredient that became an explosive catalyst because I had the mind to receive it a certain way. And you could almost think of it as like well-roundedness. Like within his lane, David Garrigues is a tremendous mind, a tremendous teacher. Outside of that lane, it's not so much. And I'm interested in life, which is all the lanes. Like, right? You were talking about making highways in I don't know why I'm using your language already, but like, it's just how I build rapport with somebody, but it was unconscious, I swear. That, I'm interested in returning to a place of lanes everywhere and lanes nowhere at the same time. So it's like laneless, which is just freedom, which would be like traveling in space. Which direction do you want to go? And then, so if I'm in mind space, which direction do I want to go? And as a spiritual being having a human experience, I want to go in the direction of who I'm interacting with, unless I don't. And then I want to go away from them, but I don't want to stay around them, or I want to persuade them, or, in comes all the skill set of living as a human here. So Arash is the most enlightened that I've seen. Tremendous things, like Vince Kelvin opened my third eye I was kind of tranced, and then he came to me and he said some things to me, and he's like, pay attention here, and now you're seeing this opening. And then I felt like like the sound feeling of like a balloon, kind of like as you squeeze it through something, and you just feel it like rub, like that rubbing sound you get from like a balloon. I felt that sound. So synesthesia, I felt the sound of that right where my pineal gland is, because I know where that is. And I know where it feels also because I do so much pranayama. So I know the location of my pineal more than an anatomy book. I feel the location of my pineal gland. And I felt the opening. Now, I don't know what that was. I don't know if it moved inside my brain or if some of the neurons around it like woke up or whatever. Because talking with Arash, I've literally felt, because I know where my parasylvian region is. I feel it. Your brainstem, and right above it's the thalamus, and then right above it's your parasylvian region. And I felt tingles, just like when I do hyperventilating and hold my breath, and oxygen goes right to the brainstem, and you feel the tingles around the brainstem and the central axis of the brain. Without doing pranayama, communicating with Arash, hearing his words, my neurons had to process his grammar, which was unlike any grammar that I've heard anywhere else. So it creates new references of concepts and how to communicate. And I literally felt the tingles. So that's a tremendous thing for somebody. So, that's my take on like enlightenment from people. I'm very interested in meeting enlightened people. I have found what I want, which includes, like, on this path, so much has awakened in my yoga from following the path of IMC and Arashti Bazaar. Yes, Arashti Bazaar is amazing. When's your next okay, I am. That my training in yoga apparently more easily manifests using his teachings. Then on top of this, his life and his integrity that I've seen, like I said, I think in Enlightened Masculinity, I mean, I've seen incredible things. Like I've seen him induce an orgasm in a woman by talking to her in a public space with her consent. Like but not asking her, hey, can I do this? But she wanted it the whole way and she felt good afterwards also. I've also seen him interact with homeless men that I was repulsed by and didn't want to interact with. And here I am a yogi training myself to be comfortable in the heat, comfortable in the ice cold, comfortable in stressful situations, and comfortable just everywhere, you know, independent and unaffected from the extremes of life. And yet he went beyond my range. And it could be just he's a decade older than me. He had some acting training, this or that. If whatever he did that got him there, outside of his genetics that I can't duplicate, I want that. And to the degree that anybody can show me better, I would go with them, for sure. Like I would never deny what happened with Arash, but it's always awareness of the teacher that when you would want the student to find their best. And it's my mission to present to them the best. It's my mission for them to perceive me as the best. But if you get too caught up in a single student, then you'll ruin your whole career. So if you can convince many, many people that you're the best, which in this day and age would include the world, because to do that, you got to put yourself on social media and everything. So you're open for everybody's inspection. Then you either are the best or time will reveal you as the fraud. And so Arashti Bazaar is the real deal. Arashti Bazaar is the top of the pyramid. And he refers to other people. And I think that that's cool. And I follow those people also. But, you know, on what I feel inclined to do in my Dharma, when I look up from how I'm walking, I see him right in front of me. And, you know, and I don't feel as if this is the only lifetime that this has been the case. So, but I can't prove that. So as far as enlightenment, that's where it goes for me. What about you, bro?
Yeah. So I figure we wrap up in about 5 minutes or so. I've got a couple things I need to attend to today. Nonetheless, though, yeah, I mean, on the topic of Arash, I mean, I completely, I'm along the same path. Wearing the IMC hat for a reason, you know.
That's
I haven't
dope.
taken this off, like, basically since I've gotten it, and I love it. But the whole idea being that, like, I don't know, I see a future version of myself within him. And I found this for any teacher-student relationship. It's that the student sees themselves as the master, and the master sees himself as the student. And it's that mutual seeing of each other that creates such a strong relationship, because it is such it's a recognition of the self in a lot of ways at different points in time, but nonetheless recognition of the self.
Well said.
Beautiful ways of just understanding again that, like, reality is 100% what you shape it to be. It's not what society imposes upon you. You choose however you want to live, and there's oftentimes you can make choices that are unpopular with what society may think in today's day and age. But it's in making those choices that those are the types of people that I've found, like, as I go through history and study men who've really done something in the world and have really made an impact, at least historically. They're the ones who bucked the trend. They weren't the ones who were going along with exactly what things were saying. That's not to say they did it in every single aspect of their life. Some
Because
men
that's not the
have.
point of focus.
Right. And so it's like figuring out, okay, what are the areas of focus that you really want to specialize in? And from there, focusing in on those and how are you bucking the trend in those particular areas. I don't think it is bucking the trend in every single way. I think that's kind of, that person's just like I don't know. Perhaps that's like what an Agora yogi was like in many ways. It's, I think it's so important to present the opposite to whatever society has seen in today's day and age, because It's always a balance between things. We go in one direction, society, the pendulum swings one way. Eventually it has to swing the other way. And who's going to be the person, or who are going to be the people who start changing in the other direction? Over time, it's going to swing that way too far. And then there's going to be someone who swings the pendulum back again towards the center. It always comes back towards the center in the middle path. So
the push-pull is essential awareness for the masculine and the spiritual man to be aware of when is it a pushing and when is it a pulling? When is the pendulum coming towards me? When is it going away from me? Like a woman says to me the other day, or my girlfriend says to me the other day about a woman like talking about minimum wage, and is like, and I did it with somebody also, I'll tell both of these, was in communication, when you feel the pull, sometimes instead of pushing, pull more. Or if you feel the push, instead of pulling, push more. So she says to me, I think minimum wage at Walmart workers should make $20 an hour. So I say, why not $100 an hour? And so I pushed further into that. My girlfriend didn't have a response for that. She didn't know what the girl would say. Like, so you push further. Why not $1,000 an hour? You just keep pushing, and it's going to bring back balance, because everybody's been pushing against them. So they have learned that living is pushing, because that's the pathways, the neural pathways of that. And I am free from needing to push or needing to pull, because I've proven myself to the universe and the gods that I'm totally content sitting doing nothing. And not in a druggy way. Like, I can sit and do nothing longer than you, I bet, and enjoy it too, and not grit my teeth through it and just to win a bet. Like, I will enjoy it. I will enjoy while I do it every moment. And then another girl, or one of my clients actually, she says, I say something about, like, I don't recall exactly what it was. It was like maybe missing an event or something like that, or something in her voice tone. I was on the phone with her, and she was like, almost had a little conflict with her son or something. And I was like, something about your voice tone, like maybe the situation would be different if a different voice tone had approached it, or something like this. And she says something like, yeah, it's probably my fault for this or that. And I say, yeah, it's definitely your fault for this or that. And so what she was used to with her and her husband's communication of something like, it's probably my fault. And the husband would be like, no, it's not your fault, honey. Don't blame yourself. And so there's this, she's pulling, trying to take responsibility, and he's pulling, trying to say, no, don't take responsibility. So they're pulling at each other. She says, to me, it's probably my fault. I say, yeah, it's definitely your fault. And I push into her. She laughed. There was an emotional release. She was not used to the energy.
That's every communication. Yeah.
And so there was peace was resolved. Wellness came from that communication. As a yogi in this modern world, being able to do that with people digitally requires communication. I'm not going to be able to touch them and just physically demo how to do something. Like, communication is essential. It's the next level, man. So I would love to continue this. How would you wrap up the talk? You're so good at keeping me on track. I know that you would have good ways to tie a nice, neat little bow on this.
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing I want to ask you before we end up closing is, have you done a 10-day Vipassana meditation or no?
No, that's a Yuri Verbishchuk kind of thing.
Okay. I've been, I'm definitely gliding along that path, but that's along the same way of you're just sitting down for basically 10 days and you don't do anything, nonetheless, getting us too far off topic.
Well, this is one of those things that, like, Doug Swenson is very, 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 very good at yoga. He's very good at being in nature. He's very good at being by himself, but put him around people and he's awkward. And if you want to be very still, and I would say this to Yuri, and I think I have said it to Yuri, if you want to be very still, anybody can relax their body. Like, anybody can sit still and eventually acquire the skill of not responding to what's happening inside. But if you're going to live in the world, there's going to be happenings happening inside. And if you don't have the tools to deal with all of the spectrum of human happenings inside, then you're going to quickly revert from enlightened being to a little boy, because you're still behaving from patterns of a little boy, like me. All my insecurities that I uproot every day with my girlfriend, with my teaching, with my interactions out socially. Don't think I don't have insecurities that I'm not uprooting. They're just little boy impressions inside of me. And meditation helps to, like, assimilate what the lessons learned. And I don't have experience of a 10-day Vipassana, so I can't speak on that really. But I have plenty of experience with advanced meditators who are just awkward out socializing. They're not good with people. They're good with themselves. And so, which indicates to me they're not really good with themselves. They're just settled. They have settled in a certain way of being. So their mind has settled, but they're still dirt. and interacting with people cleans the dirt. I don't want to be settled. I want to have clean insides. Settled is different. If I have muddy water in this bowl, the mud can settle and I'm a clear vessel. But any interaction with the world and I'm muddy again because the mud was inside. So there needs to be this balance and and exchange. Interacting with the world, create peace inside. Go interact with the world, which creates disturbance. Bring back, I have the technology to create peace. Disturbance, peace, and I clean up my world, and then I'll have discernment, get rid of people that create the disturbance, create a space, hold space for stillness and peace. And, whoa. Oh, I hear Arash's rap song. I forgot there was rain sounds in the background. And there was a great key point there. And, yeah, where was I going with that?
It'll come back. Nonetheless,
Yeah.
I think we start to close. Maybe
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit about flavor of language, some silent flute and ninth limb, and where we can continue to find some of your content. At least for me on my side, I'm continuing to build up a new sunrise yoga program in Montclair, New Jersey, where we wake up at sunrise on Saturday mornings, go hike for a bit, do yoga right around sunrise, hike again, and then finish off with some sacred communication lectures that we've studied under Arash. So maybe you can tell me a little bit more about some of the products that you have ongoing right now and where we can find more information.
Well, everything's on ninthlimb.com. You can find everything about me there. And, you know from listening to this, if you want to study with me. Like, if you think this is the limit, just keep listening. But, I mean, guys, I have 700 videos on YouTube. I have, 85 podcasts now. So many live streams that I've given on Facebook, and Instagram doesn't even record them. So I've been practicing this a lot. If you think that this is the limit of what I have to teach you, and I'm not even teaching you. You're catching me mid-sentence in my own thoughts. I'm just speaking how I think to myself. When I start to teach, it's a totally different transformational experience. So after listening to this, if this is something interesting to you. The link is in the bio or in the bottom. Not in the bio, that's an Instagram saying. The link is underneath. And yeah, come train with me. I'll transform everything in the way that you want and in ways unfamiliar to you, because if you knew how to get there, you would have already done it. So at some point, there's a practice of surrender. With Sunrise, Rising Suns. That's super cool, man. And how have you felt? I know you got to go, actually, so maybe we pick it up the next time. I want to hear about the experience of nature. I think nature is essential as a spiritual man. There's so much riches there, so much enrichment to be found in nature as a spiritual man. I'd really love to get into that. So we have a private Facebook group. The link is underneath also, where we give specific content on weekdays that is not found elsewhere. It's just for you guys that follow. And we'll see you next weekend, Saturday and Sunday at noon. This is a weekend endeavor now. So come to the Enlightened Masculinity podcast, everyone. Like this, share this, follow this, and send us your questions. Thank you, Akash. And we'll see you next week.
Namaste. That's a wrap.